Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about a Nightblade Tank build that means you no longer need to have a healer in your 4-player content. Let's first talk about a few of the strengths of the build. First off, this build has really strong ultimate regeneration, meaning that you can really have your ultimate up most of the time and can quickly alternate between the various ultimates you might be using dependent on the situation, without having too much downtime. In addition to that, you also have high resource sustain with this build, meaning you're able to really have a bit more fun playing with your abilities, and perhaps spamming them a bit more than you usually would for another, I guess, more typical tank build. However, there are a couple of downsides, and one of them is the build is quite positionally focused, meaning your group will have to be on the same page as you. While you can have really great heal output, it requires that the 3 DPS in your 4-player team are within a certain radius to you, and sometimes in a rectangular forward-facing capacity, so they're in front of you, such that they can actually be healed. However, once again, if you are running with 3 DPS, you probably will be in like a pre-made group, so that shouldn't be an issue. But just a reminder, make sure you're communicating that, otherwise you might end up with a few dead team members wondering why there's no healer in the group. With that said, the other thing to keep in mind is that you're also a little bit less tanky than, say, a typical tank build, as you do give up a few resistances, you do give up a little bit of max HP in return for that extra resource sustain, and in return for extra ultimate regeneration. With that said, let's get into talking about the sets, the skills, and also the CP for this build. I also want to take a quick moment just to let you know that we are doing a quick build format here, so I'm not going to go into as much depth as I normally would. If you do like this format and find it more digestible, please let me know in the comments down below, as I'd love to know what you prefer, this or a longer form guide. Starting off with the sets, the first we're using is Bogdan's Heavy Helmet in Infused, and a Light Shoulders with Divines, one with multi-effect enchantment, the other with maximum health. The reason we use Bogdan's is for some more group survivability with the healing, and a 5% proc rate isn't bad considering we're running many different heal over time effects in our build. This can be farmed from Elden Hollow 2. Moving on to the next set, we're using the Cuirass of the Dragon, so the Echeverry Dragon Guard set. We're using a chest piece infused. We're also going to be using a hands in sturdy. We're going to be using legs in infused, and we're also going to be using Sabatons of the Dragon feet in sturdy. And then finishing that off with a Necklace of the Dragon, once again with the infused trait. We also have alchemical acceleration for the enchantment here, and this will be all of our jewelry enchantments just to boost up our potions, and we'll talk a little bit about that later in the video. The reason we're using Echeverry Dragon Guard is because we want to be reducing our ultimate cost as much as possible to ensure we can have uptimes of our ultimates as high as possible. And you will see, once again, in a little bit, why it's kind of exciting and a fun playstyle. Similar to the Echeverry Dragon Guard reasons, we're using Werewolf Hide as well. It's going to be giving 1 ultimate per second, which doesn't sound like a lot, but certainly adds up when you consider the duration of the ultimates this build uses. Typically go for 30 seconds, that is 30 ultimate, which can be very useful. Now, that's really the main benefit beside this, but in a similar way to how we've orientated our sets, it's sturdy for the waist, and the only actual armor piece we're using for Werewolf Hide. And then we have, our infused rings with alchemical acceleration, and then we have our weapons, Werewolf Hide weapon here, a Werewolf Hide shield, and then also a Werewolf Hide ice staff. Note that you should also upgrade these to legendary when possible, and that the trait here on the front bar, I used this for a bit more stamina sustain, but you can also use something like reduce the enemy's weapon damage to reduce their damage they're doing. Up to you, really. The weakening enchantment that's called, I believe, from memory, but I might be wrong. As far as where these sets drop, you can find Dragon Guard in Eastmarch, and you can farm your Werewolf Hide in Glenumbra. For your rings, I recommend farming Dolmens as they have a 100% drop rate, and if you're looking for your weapons, you can either do public dungeons or kill some Warg bosses. For the remainder of your armor, you can either do delves or perhaps find them in chests, otherwise there are some shared loot tables with doing Warg bosses. Now it's time to move on to the skills. We're using Pierce Armor, a great melee taunt. We're also using Refreshing Path, which is a self-heal for us and also heal for our allies. Major Expedition is nice too for speedrunning a little bit. On top of that, Funnel Health. This is a small AoE heal, and I say AoE because it can hit up to 2 allies. So, a minor thing, but also nice to help proc Bogdans as well, so that will come down and heal our group. Using this ability once every 4 seconds also grants us an extra 2 ultimate, which is excellent for our ultimate sustain. We're also using Heroic Slash, just for the minor maim and also for the ultimate regeneration, amazing ability. And then Sap Essence, this is one of the ones you can flex out for, say, more self-healing, but I am trying out the Major Sorcery just to scale up with the healing to get a little bit extra boost. Not that it's a big amount, but you know, every little helps. And if you're in trash, hitting all of the enemies at once with this can do a sizable heal. So it is a little bit useful in AoE environments, less so in single target. This now, the ultimate choice, Reviving Barrier, really is the best part about the build. With our ultimate regen, we're able to sustain this ultimate 100% of the time, meaning that by the time the 30 seconds is ended, we can recast it to our allies. Now, the damage shield might have worn off by then, but the healing over time certainly will keep going for that 30 seconds, meaning we're always going to be providing the group with some sort of healing. However, as you can imagine, this is where the issue comes in, of having your group within a certain area, 12 meters maximum, so that they are getting shielded, as if they go out of that, especially in harder content, you might find them dying. Now, if you're doing content where this is not required, so let's just say there's not much AoE going out, you can also consider just swapping over your bar and using Aggressive Warhorn. And since it's 30 seconds, you'll see that they're both 30 and 30. That way, we can more or less ensure really good uptime. Since Aggressive Horn costs more ultimate, it will be up a little bit less, but we're still looking at 80% plus uptime on your horn itself, which is excellent. Moving into the off bar, we're going to have Inner Rage. Once again, a great taunt that really needs no introduction. Silver Leash to pull enemies in, which is essential for stacking things up nicely so you can AoE everything down. And then we have Mass Hysteria. Mass Hysteria? I said that a bit weird, didn't I? This is going to be used just for fearing enemies in place. With the Elsweyr changes, they no longer run around everywhere, so it's kind of like your CC and keeping ads from damaging your allies as you're getting taunt. Now this ability here is a flex spot. You can consider other healing abilities. You can consider using perhaps debuffs. Let's have a look. As an example very quickly, going to Undaunted, Blood Altar could be an example of that, a bit more healing. However, if you do need Elemental Drain, it's excellent for your group just to provide them with the minor Magicka steal. With no healer to provide that, in heavy Magicka groups you will want to be running it. In stamina groups though, as I said, you can probably slot it out for Blood Altar or another ability. Finishing off with Blockade of Frost, we're using this ability first off for the lightish CC of the slow, which works well over Mass Hysteria. In addition to that, it's also going to be proccing our weapon enchantment, meaning the enemies we're fighting are adequately debuffed. Finally, I just want to also mention that you can swap out Mass Hysteria if you'd like, with some other supportive abilities too during a boss fight. And as we move into the final discussion, which is CP and a few of the key other aspects of the build, I did mention Healing Orb before, but didn't really show it on screen. It is the morph version here, we'll just quickly unlock it, Healing Orb, and as I said, you can just slot this out here when you're doing boss fights. So keep that in mind, and obviously the synergy, yeah, restoring health and Magicka or stamina is excellent for your group when there's no healer. Alright, let's now get in to talking about some of the other key aspects of the build. As you might have noticed, I'm playing an Argonian character, and I did swap this over recently. I was trying out Nord for the ultimate gen to see how that stacked up against Argonian, and unfortunately, Nord didn't quite make the cut, and I know that typically a Nord is the best tank these days, but in this case Argonian is better because of the resourceful passive. Whenever you drink a potion, you're getting that extra health, Magicka and stamina, which cannot be beaten, especially with the build, reducing our pot timing to, as you'll see, we're going to pop one. 22 seconds. If you were to go to legendary quality rings, you could get that down to 20 seconds, which is an absolute amazing number for really just restoring your resources. Now for that reason, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. First off, why are we using potion alchemical acceleration enchants on our jewelry? Well, it comes down to the catalyst ability here. Whenever you drink a potion, you get 20 ultimate, and if you're getting it down to 20 seconds, that is a really good ultimate regen, especially, once again, we're talking about 30-second duration ultimates, so you get 1.5 pots, technically, per ultimate, though you will have to time your pots properly to make sure you don't waste ultimate when you're casting your ultimate. I said ultimate a lot then, but I hope it made sense. Let's get into the next topic, which is what pots, what food you should be using. So first off, just use trash pots. It's not worth burning pots that are expensive, so just get your standard trash Essence of Magicka, Essence of Stamina. That way you save money and are able to use many pots, and since they're all basically mini tri-pots because of Argonian, you are getting that benefit regardless, which is why Argonian is so strong. When it comes to food, just your standard tri-food. Very nice, and also increasing those max stats does help us to have a bigger pool from which to use our potions into. Yeah, not much more to say about that. Moving into our CP tree. It's just a very rough and ready one that I've prepared. A little bit of sprinting for just running past and stacking mobs behind corners. Bashing Focus just for getting bash out. Arcanist, Tenacity, no surprise though. I will say with Tenacity you could consider putting these points elsewhere, as you won't be heavy attacking that often. Moving in, Tumbling. Shadow Ward, fairly standard, just ensuring that you can block and roll as needed. With here, we went into Blessed 75, 14% healing, and then we've allocated some points into critical healing, as well as some points into our magic damage, which will naturally scale our healing, as many of the healing abilities of the Nightblade do magic damage, and it's healing proportionally based on that. Going around, Master at Arms, direct damage abilities, just a little bit more DPS for the group. And yeah, nothing in this tree here, the ritual. We have 66 points in Ironclad, 23 in Thick-Skinned, 32 in Hardy, and 27 in Elemental Defender. And because of the sort of nature of the build, I really have tried to go full Bastion stacking. Whether that's worth it or not is up to you to decide. You can always consider re-evaluating this and putting more Bastion points back in to your Hardy and Elemental tree just to give yourself a bit more tankiness. And with Quick Recovery, I've boosted us up a lot for the similar reason to Bastion, a lot of group heals, and I just want to try and maximize our own sustain. So yeah, that's a rough and ready CP tree. You can also tinker that as you like, but all in all, that covers all the aspects of the build that you need to know to get into the combat and just have fun with it. I really recommend it. Please let me know if you enjoy it. But until next time guys, all the best, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you all soon in another video. Bye bye.